Rick Harry, better known as the artist Xwalacktun, is responsible for bringing so much Coast Salish art to our public spaces. If you have a chance to visit the O'Dane Art Museum in Whistler, the first magnificent piece you see is his 16-foot cut aluminum tube telling the story of the great floods and the Squamish people being saved by the eagle bringing salmon. Xwalacktun believes in the role of public art. He believes in telling the stories of his ancestors through his art, and we are all richer for it. He also finds time to mentor and encourage others to express themselves through carving, not only in BC, but in Scotland, if you can believe it, where he has built 34 totem poles. This is his story. Xwalacktun, one of the characteristics that comes through in your early life is how much support you had from your family and from your teachers. That's not often the story, is it?
Not often the story that you have people helping you out. Yeah, well, sometimes you just go ahead and do it, right? I mean, although I had some support, I always went into my own space and just kept doing the work.
Does that mean even as a youngster, a little guy, you were whittling away at wood, or?
Yeah, when I started carving, I was 12, but when I was drawing, I was kind of lost in my own world and drawn. I was able to stay up late, like when the late shows are on, I'm still at the kitchen table drawing and listening to all the scary movies on after midnight.
So it was always in you?
Yeah, it was always in me. I just enjoyed it, yes.
Did you ever question that and say, where does this come from?
Well, I actually feel I know where it came from. It came from my my older brother, because he was drawing and I saw his work, but I never saw him drawing, but I saw his finished pieces and I said, wow, I want to be able to do that. So I started drawing.
And did you think, I'm going to make this a professional career?
I didn't. Not until even after I graduated from high school, even though the high school gave me a nice big block letter saying, you know, I'm a fabulous artist at Howell Sound Secondary. And I just realized, no, all I want to do is make money like everybody else. And so I tried to get a job in the labor force and, you know, tried logging, mining, you know, anything that I can make some money over a 2-week paycheck, right? But it never happened. So I hitchhiked everywhere for like 9 months, I believe. I didn't get a job, and one time I went down where my father was, and I went in the office on the log boom there, and he saw me coming, so he drove the dozer boat up. He says, "What are you doing here, son?" I said, "I want to apply for a job here." He says, "No, you don't." He says, "I don't want you here." He says, "Go back to school." And my mother said the same, and my homeschool coordinator said the same. "Go back to school, be an artist." And I'm thinking, there's no money in being an artist.
So you went to Emily Carr?
Yeah, it started off as the Vancouver School of Art. Then 2 years later, it became Emily Carr College of Art on Granville Island.
And so what did that do for you as an artist?
It kind of opened my eyes and explored different venues, you know, in the art world. I went in as a printer, but I came out as a sculptor. Even though I liked carving, but I spent more time learning how to sculpt stone. I was learning how to stone carve.
When you talk about doing a piece, does it come to you when you see a piece of wood, or is it, you know, through meditating with it, feeling it?
No, at the beginning, I just started copying at first because, you know, I didn't have my own ideas. Because if you think about it, when Bill Reed and, you know, all the northern people brought down the northern style, we have a lot of northern style artwork here in the lower mainland here in Vancouver, that, you know, that's what I was copying. I thought we all did that kind of work, right? So, but later on, I started realizing there's Coast Salish art.
And that's you.
That's me now. And I was inspired by someone who didn't know he inspired me. I just saw his work. And that was, he lived in Buckleton, around that area, Boundary Bay. Charles Elliott. That's his name, Charles Elliott.
Can you remember the first piece of art that you sold?
I sold, yeah, I do. That was from my friend. He was working at wood fiber as a forklifter. He'd make $7 an hour, right? We're still in high school. And he wanted me to go out with him. I said, well, what are we going to do? I have no money. He says, well, you got a carving there. Why don't you sell it? So I went and tried to sell it. I says, Michael, why don't you just buy it? Because I know how much money you make, right? He says, no, I can't afford it. I said, yeah, you can. It took me a week to do this, and it only takes you 1 day to make it, to buy it. I says, come on. So he bought it off me for $20.
And you had a good evening out.
Yeah, we did. And I bought it back off him. I was going to buy it back. I was in Fort McMurray, that's where he's living. And I asked him, where's that carving you have? Where do you have it? He says, oh, it does not fit in the decor of our house, so my wife put it in the closet. I said, get it out of there, I says, if you don't want to, I will buy it back off you. He says, yeah, well, how much? I said, I'll double the price, $40. He said, no, I want $1,000 for it.
Where'd you end up?
Yeah, I have it. I have it now.
For $40?
No, he gave it to me for nothing. I actually gave him a drawing of the actual piece, the way it is. Then I drew it how I would do it today. So he has that framed up in his house now.
Talk to me about your process. Do you start when you're headed towards doing a wood sculpture, but do you start with a sketch?
Yeah, when I'm doing more like public art, I would just do a lot of sketching and try to make it work for where it's going to fit, and then tell stories with it. Because I started realizing that it's not just a piece of artwork that looks wonderful, beautiful to put on the wall. For me, I felt it had to have a backbone to it, because that's what we'd used it for. It was our written language, right? So the stories would come from that.
So let's talk about the piece that is, celebrated at the O'Dane Art Museum. It's the first thing you see when you go to the art museum. Tell me the story you're telling there.
The piece I wanted to do, because Michael's building is on a floodplain. So I says, why don't we talk about the story of the Great Flood? Because it's pretty close to what we call Inchikai. Inchikai is the mountain is now called Mount Garibaldi, but that's where it's coming from. So it's a flood story where the people, when the water rose, we found ourselves putting our canoes together like a barge, taking the planks off our houses, because they weren't nailed, they were tied. So you lay them all out. So it was like a barge. So as the water rose, we would tie our canoes to the mountain. We call it Inchikai. That's where we anchored the mountain. So some of the canoes are moving and set adrift to other areas. And if you think about, the peninsula down towards Olympia State, there's names like Squamish. We're all the same people. And I was wondering if we spread it out like that or not. But, it's a story. But I have the thunderbird, the eagle, the human with his hands up. I have the salmon. I have the canoe. Because all that tied in how we survived the Great Flood. So the eagle gathered salmon, dropped the salmon into our canoes, and that's how we survived.
And this is the storytelling that preserves the history and talks to your ancestors.
Yes.
And with that particular piece, that's complicated. This is a mock-up, but it's almost 20 feet high?
16 feet high,
16
yes.
feet high, and made out of aluminum.
Aluminum, yes.
Talk about the technique involved.
Well, to get it, I wanted to get cut out as one piece of metal from one aluminum. And in order to cut it that size, it would have been cut in Sweden, because it had a bigger cutting table. But they didn't have a big enough roller to roll it, so it would have been sent to Chicago to turn into a tube. So anyways, talked to this company here in Surrey, and we made it into two pieces, and it was welded together, and they did an awesome job, so it still looked like one piece.
It brings up the point that you've made about public art, because your art is everywhere, internationally, but certainly around British Columbia. When you're given a commission, that means that you've got to work with somebody who already has an idea in mind.
Yes.
So how is that for an artist?
So I like collaborating with the people, and and the reason why I like that is because they're going to help give it life. It's not just something stagnant sitting there. So people are going to be able to talk about it. So even pieces I've done for private homes, I would do it to fit their family, to tell their own story, right?
And you
Yeah.
see it as a collaboration, a positive thing, rather than somebody's trying to box you in.
Yes, yes.
What is the story about that beautiful piece on Ambleside Park?
That one I was talking about, if we're joking around, it's like the Peace Arch,
Yes.
right? Because we got the Squamish Rite and the West Vancouver Rites. We're meeting here. So it's outlined as a bridge, and the bridge is Lionsgate Bridge, but the Lions was named after the mountains, and the mountains are actually talking about the sisters. These two sisters came together and brought peace to these two nations. So it's sort of like bringing peace to one another, right? Right. So there's the bridging, the paddles up, showing respect for one another. The Thunderbird is watching over. The glass in the eyes are clarity. Into the medicinal garden underneath with a brick bottom represents a basket. So it all represents wealth and of healing and nurturing and growth. So there's a lot of things we can feed off that piece of artwork to help bring out messages how we can live together.
And do you feel that your ancestors are speaking through you?
I always believe that because sometimes when I'm designing, I just start sketching and all of a sudden I finish sketching. Wow, I like that. How did that just happen? And then I'm able to grow from there with my own talent, right? Just enjoy the time. Yeah.
When people look around your studio, and there you can only see part of it here, but the complexity of the equipment that you've got, given the kind of work you're doing, you've built that up over many years.
Yeah, I started off with a small straight knife and a chisel, and I started working from that. So whenever I sold something, I would buy more tools. I kept reinvesting in myself until I got where I am today.
Do you have a favorite medium?
No, I like working in wood, stone, jewelry, glass, and metal.
And do you ever find that something just doesn't work? You get partway through the process and you think this is not working?
No, I just problem solve, Like today, we don't get old growth at trees anymore to work with, so I have to work with it. Sometimes I will design it. If there's a huge knot in that tree, I'm going to design around it. And so I don't have to do detail work over that knot.
Right.
So I'll work around it.
Do you think about that when you're carving wood, taking down a tree in the forest, that it's giving something to you?
Yes. Well, I've only taken a few down, like I do some ceremony like the ancestors would have did. They give a blessing and offering to the tree that we're going to take its life away and give it new life. But I've been just, buying logs off a dry logging site, right? And just pick out a log and get it delivered, right? So I think about stuff like that. I mean, even if I get a nice tree and the bark is still wonderful, I pass that bark on to basket weavers or whoever needs it. And all the shavings that come from that tree, I bag it and I bring it to sweat lodges. So it's being repurposed in the sweat lodges for ceremony. So I kind of think of things of not wasting, right?
Do you feel that you're spiritual?
I think we're all spiritual. We just got to move with it, right? And just continue on doing the best we can. And it's like when I receive a name, my ancestral name, Xwalacktun, there was a whole process of receiving that name, and I am to carry that name in a good way, not to dirty or mud that name, because it becomes a responsibility that I have to carry that name in the best way, because many ancestors before me carried it, right? So I'm being watched.
If you look at your sense of art and you look at the pieces over time, how have you evolved?
I've always was taught by my dad, do the job right and do it better tomorrow. And if you do it right, then it'll come to you. And I didn't, it took 15 years before my balls started to roll to really start moving artwork. And it just kept doing it until it started paying off in the end. It pays off in the end if you do it right.
There must be moments when you go, boy, I didn't think I could make a living as an artist, and look at how magnificently successful you are.
Yeah, doing well now.
Very well.
Yeah.
One of the things you do is share that knowledge. You're a mentor to others.
Yes.
And you love teaching.
Yes, I have mentored many directly or indirectly, you know, just by being there or inspiring them to carry on. And like here in Squamish, it was more northern style, but now I really push Salish. So there's a lot of Salish art coming out in the Squamish Nation now. So
Could you identify the difference between the two?
Well, if you're thinking of northern, you use ovoids, U-shapes, and circles, but you know, here we're using crescents, wedges, trigons. They're different. We're more like carving more of a negative space rather than leaving a positive space. If you think of the northern, its primary form is all black, so that's flat. But you know, in Salish, we're carving deep into bring out the imagery rather than painting it.
And the young generation, the ones obviously who come to your classes, they're interested. But do you find generally there's a desire to continue the heritage and the stories?
Oh yes. Okay, I even utilize the old stories and how we can use those stories in today's society to help one move forward and heal and growth, because I use that artwork to even heal myself, right? Because the old stories had a message, and how can I utilize that message for today's society, for myself?
Tell me how you came to be involved with Scotland. I mean, this is a sort of a jump too far.
Yeah. Well, I was working in a Langley school district, and I had a person come to one of my carving classes after school program, and this man was brought to my carving class, and he's blathering away for quite some time. I says, well, Kenny, if you want any more of my time, take this piece of wood and a knife and start whittling. I have to look busy because this is a carving class, because he's kept talking to me for quite some time. He says, well, would you do this in Scotland? I says, I would. You organize it and I'll come. And he did. And we were only going to do 4 poles. We ended up doing 34 over a 12-year spread. One time an 83-year-old woman came up and she nudged me. She says, these don't belong here. So I let her do her talk and I let her finish. And then I started sharing why I was here. And next day she was there carving with us. And she would carve till late. And I said, excuse me, I noticed you haven't eaten. We always feed our elders. I got some food here. I need to feed you, right?
I've known you for a long time, and I've never seen you other than with a big smile on your face and happy.
Yes. Yeah, I enjoy life.
Never get down, discouraged?
No, well, you know, things happen. I just look at it and I say, well, this is how I have to deal with it. And some things I've worked with it, and some things I just let go. You know, do I have to carry that, or do I need to deal with it? So I just kind of work it that way.
When you look at today's world situation, which is so difficult and upsetting for people,
Yes.
how do you look at it?
Well, you know, you pray for the people, you know, like if we all have to understand, like in a lot of my teachings is the world is a vessel, and that vessel takes us on our life journey. And if we think it in a form of, if we're all sitting in a canoe together and we're pulling together, we all have to work together. Otherwise, the canoe is going to go all over the place. So we need to work together, focus, move forward together. And a lot of the teachings is our weakest link is our strongest link. So if somebody's struggling, we got to help them, because otherwise it weighs on our canoe. It's going to be harder work to move forward. So we always need to uplift people.
When you hear all of the moves that have been made as far as reconciliation is concerned, do you feel that this is a positive time, or we're just at the beginning of it?
Yeah, I believe I've been working on it for a long time, because I was in the public school system, you know, some of the times in college and universities, and, you know, that this movement that now is happening is a good thing. I know we all know what all happened in the past. We all know where we are now. What can we do to keep moving forward, right? And there's a lot of work to be done, but it's like taking on a bike. You want to get up that hill. It takes one pedal at a time to get up there.
And you think that we're moving in the right direction?
Yes, there's still snags all along the way, but we got to keep going with the positive, keep moving forward.
As we entered the nation area right here, there's a sign saying this is a drug and alcohol-free zone.
Yes.
And I assume that that's something that you embrace, your people embrace, and you're trying to make that work.
Yes, we try to make it work. People are people. They still struggle with abuse, and something else that's just a symptom, right? There's more work to be done. What's happening inside that person if they're caught up in that situation? Again, we got to uplift them and help them the best way we can.
And you've done it, of course,
by example too, right?
By example with your children.
Yes.
What are the ages of your kids?
My youngest is 8.5. The next is 30, 32, and 40.
And so you've had lots of experience in terms of mentoring and guiding and passing the stories on.
Yes.
Do you see your older children passing the stories on in the same way?
Yes. Even the older boy took on the youngest, and he has a little studio, and he would ask his brother, "Can you show me how to carve this?" So he was there teaching him how to carve. And then when I have Stanley, my youngest one, when I was in Whistler, he was teaching people how to carve.
And he was
right in there, "No, you're doing that wrong. I'll show you." And he shows them how to do it right.
It must please you as a father.
Yeah, just watch it happen and put a smile on my face.
What do you hope is the legend of all of your art and you as a person?
Well, like I said, I would like to see all the messages behind. Every piece of work that is left behind, there's some kind of message to help move forward, to work together, to be together as one. As we're always saying, even when I've been in sweat lodges, they say all my relations, I'm related to you, I'm related to the earth, I'm related to the air and the water, and something greater myself. So we just got to think of all those relations that we have to be who we are here on this physical world.
Thank you for everything you've contributed.
Thank you.
Xwalacktun, a BC legend.